Richard Hale slammed his fist on the mahogany desk so hard that his coffee cup shattered against the floor. She's a pregnant waitress with 4 kids living in a condemned apartment, and you're telling me she just inherited everything my family has been fighting for since 1971. His lawyer nodded slowly. Franklin Ashford died 3 weeks ago. The will is ironclad. Elena Moreno gets the hotel, the land, and the mineral rights, all $218 million worth. Richard grabbed the legal documents and hurled them across the room. 50 years. My father burned that hotel to the ground trying to get those rights. I've spent $30 million in lawsuits, and now some nobody from Baltimore is going to waltz in and take it all. He leaned forward, his eyes cold as winter stone. Find everything on her, every debt, every weakness, every pressure point. I want that woman destroyed before she even understands what she's inherited. What Richard Hale didn't know was that Elena Moreno had already survived things far worse than a billionaire's threats, and the secrets buried beneath that crumbling hotel were about to change everything. Before we begin this incredible journey, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and follow Elena's story to the very end. And please comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. Now let me tell you how a desperate mother with nothing became the woman who brought an empire to its knees. The coughing started at 3 in the morning. Elena Moreno opened her eyes in the darkness, her hand already moving to her swollen belly, where her 5th child kicked against her ribs. Across the cramped bedroom, 2-year-old Rosa was choking on her own breath, her small body shaking with a cold they couldn't afford to treat. Elena pushed herself up from the mattress on the floor. Her back screamed. Her feet were swollen. 7 months pregnant, and she had already worked 16 hours yesterday between 3 jobs that barely covered half their bills. She crossed the room and lifted Rosa from the crib she shared with 4-year-old Lucas. The toddler was burning with fever. Her forehead felt like fire against Elena's palm. "Mama's here, baby. Mama's here." Rosa whimpered and clung to her mother's neck. Elena carried her to the kitchen, turned on the faucet, and waited for water that never got truly hot. The medicine had run out 4 days ago. The next paycheck was 6 days away. The math never worked. It never had. She held Rosa over the sink and let the steam from barely warm water try to clear the child's congested lungs. It was what her own mother had done in Mexico when they couldn't afford doctors. It was what poor mothers had done for generations. It was all Elena had. "Please God," she whispered. "Please let her be okay. I can't lose another one. I can't." Behind her, a small voice spoke. "Mama, is Rosa sick again?" Elena turned. Sophia stood in the doorway, 8 years old, going on 38, her eyes too serious for a child's face. She had stopped being a little girl the day her father died. Now she was Elena's partner, her helper, her reason to keep standing, when standing felt impossible. "She has a fever, mija. Go back to sleep." Sophia didn't move. "I can hold her while you rest. You need to sleep, Mama. The baby needs you to sleep." Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. When did her daughter learn to mother her own mother? "I'm okay, Sophia. I promise. You always say that, but I hear you crying at night when you think we're asleep." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She had tried so hard to hide her desperation from the children. She had smiled through empty cupboards. She had pretended the electricity being shut off was an adventure. She had made missing their father into bedtime stories about angels watching over them, and Sophia had seen through all of it. "Come here," Elena said. Sophia crossed the kitchen and wrapped her thin arms around her mother's waist, careful not to squeeze Rosa between them. They stood there in the darkness of an apartment they were about to lose 3 generations of strength, holding each other up. "We're going to be okay," Elena said. "I don't know how yet, but we're going to be okay." "I know, Mama, because you never give up. Papa told me that once. He said you were the strongest person he ever met." Elena closed her eyes and let herself remember Miguel's face, his laugh, the way he danced with her in their tiny kitchen when the children were asleep, the way he kissed her goodbye that last morning, promising to bring home Chinese food for Sophia's birthday. He never came home. The crane cable snapped at the construction site. They called Elena at her first job and told her she was a widow with 4 children and 1 more on the way. That was 8 months ago. 8 months of drowning. "I miss Papa," Sophia whispered. "I miss him too, mija, every single day." Rosa's coughing finally eased. Her fever hadn't broken, but the crisis had passed for now. Elena put her back in the crib, tucked Sophia into the bed she shared with her brothers, and sat alone in the kitchen surrounded by bills stamped with red letters. Final notice. Immediate action required. Service termination. The eviction notice had arrived last week, 30 days to vacate. The landlord had already found new tenants willing to pay more. Elena spread the bills across the table and did the math she already knew by heart. 3 jobs, 70 hours a week. After rent, utilities, food, and medicine, she was short by $400 every month. That gap had been growing since Miguel died. First she sold his truck, then her wedding ring, then the television, then anything else that could bring a few dollars. Now there was nothing left to sell. "What do I do?" she asked the empty room. "Miguel, what do I do?" The room didn't answer. It never did. She must have fallen asleep at the table because the next thing she knew, weak gray light was filtering through the window and Marco was tugging on her sleeve. "Mama, wake up! You fell asleep in the kitchen again!" Elena jerked upright. Pain shot through her neck where it had been bent at an impossible angle. The baby kicked in protest. "What time is it?" "Almost 7. Sophia is getting everyone dressed." Almost 7? She was supposed to be at the hospital cafeteria by 7:30. The bus took 40 minutes if she was lucky. She was already late. Elena moved through the morning in a blur of desperation. She checked Rosa's fever, found it lower but not gone, and made the impossible decision to send her to daycare anyway because she couldn't miss another shift and couldn't afford a babysitter. She made breakfast from the last of the oatmeal, dividing it between 4 children, while telling them she had already eaten. The lie came easily now. She had been skipping meals for months. She braided Sophia's hair with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. She helped Marco find his homework. She changed Lucas's sheets because he had wet the bed again, a problem that had started after the funeral and never stopped. Through it all, she kept her voice steady and her face calm. The children couldn't know how close they were to losing everything. They couldn't know that their mother had no plan, no savings, no safety net. They couldn't know that she had considered in her darkest moments whether they would be better off without her. "Time to go, Kiko," she announced with false brightness. "Everybody in the car." The car was a 15-year-old Chevy Cavalier that Miguel had bought for $800 and kept running through sheer stubbornness. Since his death, it had developed a cough worse than Rosa's. The check engine light had been on for 6 months. The transmission made sounds like a dying animal. Elena loaded the children, turned the key, and heard nothing. "No, no, 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 please not today." She turned the key again. The engine clicked, but didn't catch. Come on. A third turn, nothing. "Is the car broken, Mama?" Marco asked from the back seat. Elena rested her forehead against the steering wheel and tried to breathe. She couldn't be late again. Her supervisor had already warned her. One more absence or late arrival, and she was fired. "Mama, Sophia's voice was calm, controlled, too adult. "We can walk. I know the way to school. I can take the boys and Rosa if you need to run to work." Elena looked at her daughter in the rearview mirror. 8 years old, offering to shepherd 3 younger siblings through Baltimore's streets so her mother could keep a job that paid barely above minimum wage. "No, mija. We walk together. All of us." They walked. 30 minutes through February cold with a pregnant woman, a feverish toddler, and 3 children who had learned not to complain because complaining changed nothing. Elena dropped them at school and daycare with kisses and promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Then she walked another 20 minutes to the hospital, arriving 45 minutes late with sweat freezing on her skin and her supervisor waiting with crossed arms. "Moreno, my office, now." Dolores Gutierrez was a heavy woman in her 60s who had worked at the hospital cafeteria for 30 years. She had hired Elena 4 months ago because she recognized the desperation in her eyes. She had looked the other way when Elena snuck leftover food home for her children. She had covered for her absences when the kids got sick. But even Dolores had limits. "Close the door." Elena obeyed, her heart hammering. "Sit down." She sat, her pregnant belly pressing uncomfortably against the edge of the desk. Dolores studied her for a long moment. "You look like death, mija. When did you last sleep?" "Really sleep." "I'm fine." "Don't lie to me. I've been where you are. I know what exhaustion looks like when it's eating someone alive." Elena's composure cracked. Just a little. Just enough for a single tear to escape before she could stop it. "The car won't start. Rosa has a fever. The eviction notice says we have 3 weeks. I'm doing everything I can, Dolores. Everything. But it's not enough. It's never enough." Dolores was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "This came for you yesterday. Certified mail. I signed for it because I knew you'd be here eventually." Elena took the envelope with trembling hands. Certified mail meant lawyers. Lawyers meant debt collectors. Debt collectors meant one more thing she couldn't pay. But the return address wasn't a collection agency. It was a law firm in Richmond, Virginia. Morrison Bradley and Associates. Below that, 3 words that made no sense. Estate Division Department. What is this? Elena whispered. Open it and find out. Elena tore the envelope with fingers that suddenly wouldn't work properly. Inside were several pages of dense legal language. Her eyes scanned desperately, looking for the part that would tell her what new disaster had arrived. And then she found it. Dear Ms. Elena Rosa Moreno, we are writing to inform you of your status as sole beneficiary in the estate of Mr. Franklin Beaumont Ashford, who passed away on October 15th of this year at the age of 94. Mr. Ashford has left you the entirety of his holdings, including but not limited to the property known as the Wisteria Inn, located at 1247 Mountain Hollow Road, Hollow Creek, Virginia, all surrounding land parcels totaling 847 acres, all mineral and water rights associated with said properties, and the contents of the Ashford Family Trust. Current estimated value of the estate $218,347,000. Elena read the number 3 times. Then she read it again. $218 million. Mija, Dolores leaned forward. You've gone white as a ghost. What does it say? Elena couldn't speak. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. She handed the letter to Dolores and watched the older woman's face transform from concern to shock to utter disbelief. Dios mío, Elena, do you know what this is? I don't understand. I don't know anyone named Franklin Ashford. I don't have wealthy relatives. This has to be a mistake. It says here you're his sole heir, the only one, that he specifically named you. But I've never met him. I've never even heard of him. Dolores looked at the letter again. It says he was 94 when he died. That means he was born around 1930. Could he be connected to your parents? Your grandparents? Elena's mind raced backward through family history. Her mother had come from Mexico in the 1970s. Her father was third-generation American, but his family had been poor farmers in Texas. There were no wealthy relatives, no secret connections, no reason for a stranger to leave her $200 million. I need to call this law firm, Elena said. I need to understand what's happening. Use my phone. Take as long as you need. Elena dialed with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. A receptionist answered on the 3rd ring. Morrison Bradley and Associates. How may I direct your call? My name is Elena Moreno. I received a letter about an inheritance from Franklin Ashford. I need to speak with someone who can explain what's happening. A brief pause. Please hold, Ms. Moreno. Mr. Morrison has been expecting your call. Expecting her call, as if he had been waiting, as if this was all planned. A click, and then a man's voice came on the line. Deep, gravelly professional. Ms. Moreno, thank you for calling. I'm Thomas Morrison. I was Franklin Ashford's personal attorney for over 40 years. Mr. Morrison, I don't understand any of this. I've never met Franklin Ashford. I've never heard of him. Why would he leave me anything? That's a complicated question with a complicated answer, but the short version is this. Franklin Ashford was your great-great-uncle. Your grandmother, Maria Esperanza Delgado, worked at the Wisteria Inn in the 1950s. She and Franklin fell in love. They planned to marry, but the Ashford family forbade it. Elena's heart stopped. My grandmother Maria. Yes, she was sent away. She never spoke of Franklin again, but he never forgot her. He never married. He spent 60 years watching over her family from a distance. When he knew he was dying, he decided to leave everything to you. Why me? Why not my mother? Franklin explained it in his personal letters, which I have here. He said he watched you struggling, working 3 jobs, raising 4 children alone after your husband's death, pregnant with another. He said you reminded him of Maria, strong enough to bend without breaking, brave enough to hope when hope seemed foolish. Elena was crying now. She couldn't stop. The tears fell onto the legal documents, smearing the ink. He chose you, Morrison continued, because he believed you would understand what the Wisteria Inn was meant to be, not a business, a sanctuary, a place for people who have nowhere else to go. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything yet, but I should warn you, Ms. Moreno, the moment news of this inheritance becomes public, you will have enemies. Powerful enemies. Franklin spent 50 years protecting those land rights from people who wanted to exploit them. A man named Richard Hale leads the opposition now. His father tried to destroy Franklin. Richard will try to destroy you. Elena thought of her children, her sick daughter, her unborn baby, her empty bank account. What do I do, Sahib? First, verify everything I've told you. I'll send documentation proving the family connection. Then when you're ready, come to Virginia, see the property, understand what you've inherited. Only then can you decide what to do with it. And the money, the $200 million, it's real, Ms. Moreno, every penny. But it's tied up in land and mineral rights that can't be easily liquidated. Franklin designed it that way to protect the estate from being sold off piece by piece. The property itself is the true inheritance. The money is what others want to take from you. The call ended. Elena sat in Dolores' office staring at papers that had just changed everything. $218 million, a hotel she'd never seen, enemies she'd never met, and a legacy from a man who had loved her grandmother across 6 decades of separation. "Mija?" Dolores' voice was soft. "What are you going to do?" Elena looked up. For the first time in 8 months, something other than despair flickered in her eyes. "I'm going to Virginia. I'm going to see what my great-great-uncle left me. And if someone wants to take it from me, they're going to learn that Elena Moreno doesn't go down without a fight." 300 miles away, Richard Hale was already planning his first attack. He sat in his corner office at Dominion Mining, surrounded by geological surveys and legal briefs and 50 years of his family's obsession. The rare earth deposits beneath the Wisteria Inn property were worth far more than the official estimates suggested. His own secret surveys indicated reserves that could be worth $500 million if extracted properly. His father had died trying to get those rights. A heart attack at 62 brought on by decades of legal battles and failed negotiations with the stubborn old man who refused every offer. Richard was not going to die waiting. He picked up the phone and called his head of security, a former FBI agent named Marcus Webb, who had no ethical boundaries and fewer moral qualms. "I need everything on Elena Moreno, birth certificate to breakfast cereal, every debt she's ever had, every mistake she's ever made, every person she's ever loved. I want to know her weaknesses before she knows she has them." Time frame: yesterday. The old man's lawyers will be contacting her soon if they haven't already. I need to move before she understands what she's inherited. "And if I can't find any useful leverage," Richard smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Everyone has leverage, Marcus. Everyone has a pressure point. Find hers, whatever it takes." He hung up and turned to the window, looking out at the Virginia mountains that had haunted his family for half a century. Franklin Ashford was finally dead. His chosen heir was a pregnant waitress with 4 children and no resources. This was the moment Richard's family had been waiting for since 1971. He was not going to fail. But Richard Hale had made a crucial miscalculation. He saw Elena Moreno's poverty as weakness. He saw her desperation as vulnerability. He assumed that a woman who had nothing would crumble under pressure. He didn't understand that people who have survived nothing have nothing left to fear. Elena spent the next 3 days in a state of suspended disbelief. She went to work because she couldn't afford not to. She cared for her children because they needed her. She paid what bills she could with money she didn't have enough of. But every spare moment she researched. She called her mother in San Diego at midnight, waking her from sleep, demanding answers about Grandmother Maria that she had never thought to ask before. "Why didn't you ever tell me about Franklin Ashford?" Her mother was quiet for so long that Elena thought the connection had dropped. "Mama, are you there?" "I'm here, mija. I never thought I would hear that name spoken out loud." "You knew about him." "I found letters after your grandmother died, hidden in a box under her bed. Letters from a man named Franklin, written over 60 years. He never stopped loving her Elena, never stopped watching over our family. But my mother made me promise never to speak of it. She said it was too painful. She said some loves are too big for this world." Elena felt tears streaming down her face again. "He left me everything, Mama. A hotel, land, over $200 million. He watched me struggle, and he chose me to carry on what he protected. He was a good man, Elena. The letters proved that. A good man who was forced to give up the woman he loved because his family was too proud to accept a Mexican immigrant. He spent his whole life trying to make it right." "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" "Because your grandmother made me promise. Because I thought Franklin was dead. Because the past is supposed to stay buried." Her mother's voice cracked. "I'm sorry, mija. I should have told you. Maybe if I had..." "It's okay, Mama. I understand now. What are you going to do?" Elena looked around her cramped apartment at the bills piling up at her children sleeping in beds they were about to lose. "I'm going to honor his legacy. I'm going to find out what he was protecting, and I'm going to make sure it survives." She hung up and started making plans. The eviction notice gave her 3 weeks, but she couldn't wait that long. The law firm had sent documentation proving the family connection along with keys to the property and a map to Hollow Creek, Virginia. The estate wouldn't be officially transferred for several weeks, but she had legal right to visit and assess the property immediately. She quit her jobs, all 3 of them. Her supervisors looked at her like she had lost her mind. "You're 7 months pregnant with 4 kids and no savings and you're quitting." Her convenience store manager shook his head. "Lady, you've officially lost it." "Maybe," Elena said. "Or maybe I finally found something worth fighting for." She packed everything they owned into garbage bags and cardboard boxes. It all fit into the trunk and back seat of the dying Cavalier with room to spare. A lifetime of working and striving and surviving, and it barely filled a car. The morning they left, the Cavalier refused to start again. Elena sat behind the wheel fighting panic. They couldn't stay. The apartment was no longer theirs. The landlord was coming at noon with new tenants. She had burned every bridge, quit every job bet, everything on an inheritance from a dead man she'd never met. "Please," she whispered, "please start. Just one more time. Get us to Virginia, and you can die there." She turned the key. Nothing. "Please." Again, a weak cough from the engine. "Please, God, please, Miguel, please, anyone who's listening." One more turn. The engine caught, rough and loud and wrong-sounding, but alive. Elena laughed and cried at the same time. In the rearview mirror, she saw Sophia watching her with those 2 old eyes. "We're going, aren't we?" Sophia asked. "We're really leaving. We're really leaving Mija. We're going to find out what your great-great-great-uncle left us." "Is it really worth $200 million? That's what they say. Then why did he live alone in the mountains? Why didn't he spend the money? It was a good question, a question Elena didn't have an answer for yet. "I don't know, baby, but we're going to find out." She pulled out of the parking lot and pointed the dying car south toward Virginia, leaving behind everything she had ever known. Behind her, invisible but already moving, Richard Hale's investigator, Marcus Webb, pulled away from the curb and followed at a careful distance. He had been watching her for 2 days. He had photographed the children, documented the poverty, noted every vulnerability. His report to Richard Hale was already written in his head. Single mother, 4 kids, pregnant, no resources, no support system, desperate, an easy target. Webb smiled and followed the rusted Cavalier onto the highway. This job was going to be even easier than he'd thought. What he didn't know, what Richard Hale didn't know, what no one except Elena herself would ever understand, was that desperation had forged her into something stronger than any of them could imagine. She had buried a husband and kept standing. She had starved herself to feed her children. She had worked until her body screamed for mercy and then worked more. She had touched the bottom of human endurance and refused to drown. Whatever was waiting in Virginia, whatever enemies came for her, they were about to learn what happened when they tried to destroy someone who had already lost everything. Elena Moreno was coming, and she would not be broken. The drive took 9 hours. The first 6 passed through familiar territory, highways and suburbs, and the gradual thinning of cities into countryside. The children were quiet, sensing the enormity of what they were doing without fully understanding it. Marco pressed his face against the window, cataloging everything he saw with the intensity of a scientist exploring an alien world. "Mama, look, cows, real cows, and horses." "I see them, mijo." "Do you think there are horses where we're going?" "I don't know, maybe." Lucas sat silently, his hand gripping roses, his eyes watchful and worried. Since his father's death, he had developed an anxiety that manifested in silence and shadow watching. He wet the bed now. He had stopped talking to anyone except Sophia. Something had broken inside him that Elena didn't know how to fix. "Lucas," she called softly, "are you okay, mijo?" He didn't answer immediately. Then so quietly she almost missed it. "Are we going to be homeless, Mama?" The question hit her like a physical blow. How much did he understand? How much fear was he carrying that she couldn't see? No, baby, we're going to a new home, a big one, with lots of rooms and land to explore. But what if the bad people take it? What if we have to leave again? Elena pulled the car to the shoulder of the road. She turned in her seat to face her son directly. "Lucas, look at me." He looked. His eyes were Miguel's eyes, brown and deep and carrying more worry than any 4-year-old should know. "I am your mother. It is my job to protect you. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone tries to do, I will never let you be homeless. Do you understand?" He nodded slowly. "Say it back to me." "You'll never let us be homeless." "That's right. Now you can worry about kid things. The grown-up worries are mine." It was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. But mothers make impossible promises every day. It's what keeps children believing the world is safe enough to grow up in. She pulled back onto the highway and kept driving. The last 3 hours were different. The GPS signal weakened, then died. The roads narrowed from highways to state routes to county roads to something barely wider than a path. The forest pressed in from both sides, ancient trees that had stood since before the nation existed. Fog descended. At first it was thin, just a haze that softened the edges of things. But as they climbed into the mountains, it thickened into something almost solid. The headlights barely penetrated 10 feet. "Mama," Sophia said, "I can't see anything." "I know, mija, just a little further." But she didn't know how much further. The map showed a road that didn't seem to exist anymore. The phone had no signal. They were climbing into mountains that felt less like geography and more like a barrier keeping strangers out. Then Marco spoke, his voice strange and distant. "The trees are watching us." Elena looked at him in the rearview mirror. His face was pressed against the window, his breath fogging the glass. "What do you mean, mijo?" "I can feel them. They're awake. They're deciding if they want to let us in." Sophia rolled her eyes. "Trees don't decide things, Marco. They're just trees." "These aren't just trees." Elena wanted to dismiss it as a 6-year-old's imagination, but she felt it too. Something in these woods was aware of their passage. Something was watching. The car made a sound she had never heard before, a deep grinding followed by a metallic shriek. "No," Elena whispered. "Not now. Please, not now." The engine coughed. The car lurched. Something was very wrong. "Mama!" Sophia's voice was carefully controlled, but Elena could hear the fear beneath it. "It's okay. We're almost there." She pressed the accelerator. The car moved, but wrong. Slower than it should, fighting against itself. The fog parted slightly and Elena saw lights ahead. Faint, barely visible, but definitely lights. Something's there. She pushed the dying car toward those lights. Every second felt like the engine might quit entirely. Every meter was a victory against mechanical failure. And then emerging from the fog like a ghost made of architecture, she saw it. The Wisteria Inn. 3 stories of Victorian grandeur, massive and dark against the mountain sky. Wraparound porches sagging in the middle. Windows like hollow eyes, most broken. Vines consuming entire walls. The car died. Right there in front of the building that had waited 50 years for its heir, the engine gave one final cough and stopped forever. Elena sat in the sudden silence, staring at what she had inherited. It was worse than she had imagined. Worse than the old photographs suggested. This wasn't a hotel. It was a skeleton. A corpse of a building that had been dying for half a century. "Mama," Rosa's small voice broke the silence. "I'm scared." So was Elena, terrified. This crumbling wreck was supposed to save them. This rotting monument to decay was worth $200 million. Sophia spoke first, her voice steady despite everything. "It's still standing. Whatever happened to it, it's still standing. That has to count for something." Elena looked at her daughter, 8 years old and finding hope in ruins. "You're right, mija. It's still standing." She opened the car door and stepped out into the fog. The air was cold and damp and smelled of earth and growing things. Behind her, one by one, her children emerged. They stood together in front of the hotel, 5 small figures against a mountain of decay. "Now what?" Marco asked, and for once his voice held no excitement, only uncertainty. Elena squared her shoulders. She had come too far to turn back. They had nowhere to turn back to. "Now we go inside. Now we find out what Franklin Ashford was protecting. Now we start fighting for our future." She took Rosa's hand, felt Sophia take her other side, sensed the boys falling in behind her. Together they walked toward the hotel's front door, which hung open at an angle that suggested violence. Inside was darkness. Inside was mystery. Inside was everything they didn't yet understand. But they went inside anyway. Because Elena Moreno had learned something in 34 years of struggle. You don't wait for the darkness to clear. You walk into it and make your own light. The first step inside felt like crossing into another world. Elena's phone flashlight cut through darkness so thick it seemed to have weight. The beam revealed shapes that made no sense at first, furniture draped in sheets that had become shrouds. Walls covered in something that might have been wallpaper or might have been mold. Rosa whimpered and buried her face in Elena's neck. The toddler's fever had broken during the drive, but she was still weak, still clinging to her mother with the desperation of a child who sensed danger everywhere. "Stay close," Elena whispered. "Everyone hold hands." Sophia took Marco's hand. Marco took Lucas's. A chain of children following their pregnant mother into the unknown. The smell hit them first. Decades of abandonment compressed into an odor that was part mildew, part animal, part something older and stranger. Elena fought the urge to gag. "Mama, it stinks," Marco said. "I know, mijo. We'll air it out." Can things even air out after 50 years? She didn't answer because she didn't know. They moved deeper into the building. Elena's flashlight swept across what must have been the lobby, revealing glimpses of former grandeur beneath layers of decay. A chandelier hung at a dangerous angle, half its crystals missing. A front desk stood like a sentinel, its surface covered in dust so thick it looked like gray snow. "Look," Sophia breathed. Elena turned her light where Sophia pointed. On the wall behind the desk, barely visible beneath the grime, hung a photograph in a cracked frame. She moved closer, wiping away decades of dust with her sleeve. The image showed a young couple standing in front of the hotel. The building gleamed in the photograph. Fresh paint and flowering wisteria, and wraparound porches full of guests. But it was the couple that stopped Elena's heart. The man was tall, fair-haired, with eyes that seemed kind, even in the faded photograph. The woman beside him then had dark hair and darker eyes, her face turned toward him with an expression of pure love. Elena recognized the face. "That's Grandma Maria," Sophia said. "From the pictures at Great-Grandma's house." "Yes, mija, that's her." "And that man is that Franklin." Elena touched the glass gently. This was the love story she had inherited. Two people who should have spent their lives together torn apart by prejudice and pride. 60 years of separation, a legacy of waiting. "That's him. That's why we're here." A sound from deeper in the building made everyone freeze. Footsteps. Elena pulled her children behind her, her heart hammering. The hotel was supposed to be abandoned. No one should be here. "Hello," she called, her voice stronger than she felt. "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched so long that Elena began to doubt what she had heard. Maybe it was animals. Maybe it was the building settling. Maybe it was her imagination. Then a light appeared at the far end of the lobby. A flashlight like hers held by a figure that resolved slowly into the shape of an old man. He was small and stooped, dressed in work clothes that had seen better decades, his face weathered by age and outdoor labor. "You must be Elena," he said. His voice was rough, but not unkind. "Franklin said you'd come eventually. Just didn't think it would take 3 weeks." Elena kept her children behind her. "Who are you?" "Name's Eli Cooper. Been the caretaker here since 1969. Franklin hired me right out of high school." He moved closer, his flashlight beam joining hers to push back more of the darkness. "He left me instructions. Said when the woman with Maria's eyes showed up, I should give her the keys and the letter." "What letter?" Eli reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope yellowed with age but carefully preserved. "This one. He wrote it 10 years ago, updated it every year until he got too sick to hold a pen. Made me promise to put the newest version in your hands personally." Elena took the envelope. Her name was written on the front in handwriting she had never seen, but somehow recognized as belonging to someone who had loved her before she was born. "Is there somewhere safe for my children?" she asked. "Somewhere with heat." Eli nodded. "Franklin's cabin, 1/4 mile up the hill. Got a generator propane heat running water. He lived there since the hotel closed. It's small, but it's sound." "The hotel closed in 1973. Why?" Eli's face darkened. "Fire. Middle of the night. Somebody said it deliberate. Franklin got everyone out, but the damage was done. Insurance wouldn't pay because they called it suspicious. Franklin spent everything he had fighting off the lawyers and the land grabbers. After that, he just closed the doors and waited." "Waited for what?" "For you, I reckon." Eli turned and began walking toward a side door. "Come on, let's get your little ones warm. Then you can read what he wanted you to know." They followed Eli through the darkness and out a service entrance. The fog had lifted slightly, revealing a path that wound up a gentle hill behind the hotel. At the top sat a small cabin, its windows glowing with light. "Been keeping it ready," Eli explained as they walked. "Franklin told me to. Said his heir might need a place to land before she could fly." The cabin was modest but warm. A single large room with a kitchen area, a wood stove already burning, and a sleeping loft accessible by a wooden ladder. Clean blankets were stacked on a worn couch. A pot of soup simmered on the stove. "You knew we were coming tonight," Elena said. It wasn't a question. Eli nodded. "Got a call from Mr. Morrison this morning. Told me to expect you." He gestured around the cabin. "Made sure you'd have food and heat. The rest is up to you." "Thank you, Eli." "Don't thank me yet. You don't know what you've inherited, and you don't know what's coming for you." He left without another word, disappearing into the fog like a ghost who had completed his haunting. Elena fed her children soup that tasted like heaven after hours of nothing. She settled Rosa and Lucas in the sleeping loft wrapped in blankets that smelled of cedar and thyme. Sophia and Marco made beds on the couch, exhausted beyond their ability to stay awake. only when all 4 children were asleep. Did Elena allow herself to open the letter? She sat by the wood stove, her belly heavy with the baby, who would arrive in 8 weeks, and unfolded pages that contained 60 years of love and loss. My dearest Elena, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am finally at peace. I have watched over your family for longer than you have been alive, loving from a distance because the world would not let me love any closer. Now, I give you everything I have protected, and I pray you are strong enough to bear it. The Wisteria Inn was never just a hotel. My great-grandfather built it in 1892 as a sanctuary. For 4 generations, we welcomed those who had nowhere else to go. Women fleeing violence, children without homes, families broken by poverty and prejudice. We asked for nothing. We gave everything. Your grandmother Maria understood this. She came to us in 1952, a young immigrant with nothing but courage and hope. I loved her the moment I saw her. I wanted to marry her, to make her part of this legacy, but my family would not accept a Mexican bride. They threatened to disown me, to destroy everything the sanctuary stood for. Maria left to protect me. She never knew that losing her destroyed me anyway. I never married. I never had children. I poured everything into protecting the sanctuary and the land beneath it, because in 1971 I discovered something that changed everything. Elena turned the page, her hands trembling. The land beneath the Wisteria Inn contains one of the largest rare earth mineral deposits in the eastern United States, elements essential for modern technology, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, worth enough to make men do terrible things. A family named Hale learned of this deposit. They wanted it. They offered to buy me out. When I refused, they tried other methods. Lawsuits, threats, bribery, and when all else failed, they burned my hotel to the ground. I saved what mattered. I sealed the evidence. I spent 50 years fighting them off, waiting for someone worthy to continue the fight. That someone is you, Elena. I chose you not because of blood, though our blood connection is real. I chose you because you are Maria's granddaughter, because you have her strength, because I watched you bury a husband and keep standing, because I saw you starve yourself to feed your children, because you are the woman I always hoped would come. The Hale family will come for you. Richard Hale is worse than his father. He has no conscience, no limits. He will try to break you. He will threaten your children. He will use every weapon money can buy. But you have weapons he cannot understand. You have survived what should have destroyed you. You have a purpose now. And you have something hidden in this property that he has searched for 50 years and never found. In room 217, behind the panel in the closet, you will find a safe. The combination is your mother's birthday. Inside is the first layer of truth. Beneath the hotel, in a chamber older than the building itself, lies the rest. Find it, protect it, and restore the sanctuary to what it was meant to be. I believe in you, Elena. I have always believed in you. With love across 3 generations, your great-great-uncle Franklin. Elena lowered the letter and stared into the fire. $218 million, a hotel in ruins, enemies already hunting her, and secrets buried deep enough to kill for. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling her daughter kick. "What have I gotten us into?" she whispered. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside. Her children slept peacefully, unaware of the war that was coming. Elena made a decision. Tomorrow she would find room 217. She would open the safe. She would discover what Franklin had protected for half a century. And whatever she found, she would not run from it. She was done running. The first week tested everything Elena thought she knew about strength. The hotel was worse inside than it appeared from outside. 50 years of abandonment had turned a grand building into a maze of hazards. Floors that looked solid gave way without warning. Staircases that seemed sturdy turned out to be held together by rust and prayer. Every room contained new evidence of decay. But Elena explored anyway with Sophia by her side and the younger children safely in Eli's care at the cabin. She had to understand what she was fighting for before she could fight for it. Room 217 was on the 2nd floor at the end of a hallway that had survived better than most. The door was locked unlike every other door in the building. The brass numbers gleamed despite decades of neglect. The key was in the front desk drawer, exactly where Franklin's letter had said it would be, wrapped in cloth, labeled only with the room number. Elena's hands shook as she fitted the key into the lock. "Are you scared, Mama?" Sophia asked. "Yes." "Why are you doing it anyway?" "Because being scared doesn't mean you stop. It means you go forward with your heart beating faster." She turned the key. The lock clicked. The door swung open. The room beyond stopped both of them cold. Unlike the rest of the hotel, room 217 was preserved. Dusty, but intact. The bed was made, the curtains hung properly, the furniture stood where it had been placed decades ago. "It's like time stopped in here," Sophia breathed. Elena moved to the closet. Her fingers found the panel Franklin had described. It moved when she pressed it, revealing a small safe built into the wall. The combination was her mother's birthday, July 15, 1952. The safe opened with a click that echoed in the silent room. Inside were documents, stacks of them. Land surveys, mineral assessments, corporate reports, legal papers. 50 years of research compressed into one small space. And on top, a leather journal filled with Franklin's handwriting. Elena lifted the journal and began to read. The story that emerged was bigger than she had imagined. The rare earth deposit wasn't just valuable. It was one of the most significant discoveries in American geological history. Elements that powered smartphones and electric vehicles and military technology. Worth not hundreds of millions, but potentially billions if extracted properly. Franklin had discovered this in 1971. He had told no one. He had quietly acquired surrounding land to protect the deposit from exploitation. He had created legal structures so complicated that no corporation had been able to break them. The fire of 1973 had been deliberate. Richard Hale's father had ordered it, hoping to destroy the evidence of Franklin's legal protections. But Franklin had anticipated the attack. He had moved the most important documents to the safe in room 217 days before. The deposit still waited beneath the mountain, untouched, protected, and now Elena owned it all. "Mama," Sophia said suddenly. "Someone's coming." Elena heard it too. A car engine growing louder, coming up the mountain road that should have been impassable. They moved to the window. Through the grime, Elena saw a black SUV emerging from the fog. Expensive, out of place, wrong. Two men got out. Suits and polished shoes and expressions that meant business of the worst kind. "Stay here," Elena told Sophia. "Don't come out until I say it's safe." "Mama, no, I'm coming with you." "Sophia, stay, here." The command in her voice left no room for argument. Sophia stepped back, her face pale but understanding. Elena descended the stairs, alone, the journal tucked under her arm. She reached the lobby just as the front door swung open, and the two men stepped inside. One was tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than Elena used to earn in a year. Richard Hale. She recognized him from photos Marcus Webb had unknowingly left in his surveillance reports. The other was the investigator himself, Webb, the man who had followed her from Baltimore. "Ms. Moreno," Richard said, his voice smooth as silk over broken glass. "I hope we're not intruding. You're on private property." Technically, the estate hasn't fully transferred yet, but let's not argue technicalities. He smiled, showing teeth too perfect to be natural. "I've come to make you an offer." "I've already heard your offers. The answer is no." "That was before you understood what you're dealing with." Richard took a step closer. "The legal challenges to Franklin's trust are already being prepared. 7 lawsuits, multiple courts. Challenges to his mental competency. Questions about your legitimacy as an heir. This could drag on for years. Decades. And in the meantime, your children grow up in poverty while lawyers get rich. Or you take my offer. $100 million. Clean, simple, wire transfer within 30 days. You walk away wealthy, your children are provided for, everyone wins. $100 million. Enough to solve every problem, enough to give her children everything. And all she had to do was betray a man who had loved her grandmother for 60 years. "No," Richard's smile didn't waver, but something behind his eyes turned cold. "You're making a mistake, Ms. Moreno. My family has been fighting for this land for 50 years. We don't give up, we don't go away, and we don't lose. Your family burned this hotel down with refugees inside. Your family has spent 50 years trying to steal what doesn't belong to them. I don't care how much money you offer. I don't care how many lawyers you hire. The answer is no." For a long moment, Richard just stared at her. Then he laughed. A cold, humorless sound. "You know what I see when I look at you? I see a pregnant waitress who's in way over her head. I see a woman with 4 children and no resources. I see someone who will break within 6 months, sign whatever I put in front of her, and be grateful for whatever scraps I leave behind." Elena stepped closer to him, close enough to see the emptiness behind his expensive smile. "You know what I see when I look at you? I see a man who has never struggled for anything, who has never been hungry, who has never watched his children go without and prayed for a miracle that never came. You think my poverty makes me weak. You're wrong. It makes me dangerous, because I have nothing left to lose." She pointed to the door. "Get off my property. If you come back without an invitation, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." Richard held her gaze for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out, Webb following silently behind. At the door, Richard paused. "6 months, Ms. Moreno, then we'll talk again. I'll be curious to see how your principles hold up against reality." They left. The SUV disappeared into the fog. Elena stood alone in the ruined lobby, her heart pounding, the journal pressed against her chest. Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs. "Mama, are they gone?" "They're gone, mija." "Are they going to come back?" "Yes, but next time we'll be ready." She looked down at the journal in her hands. Franklin's 50 years of research. Evidence that proved her claims. Weapons against the army Richard Hale was assembling. "Sophia, I need you to help me. We're going to read every page of this journal. We're going to understand exactly what we're dealing with. And then we're going to find allies who can help us fight." Where do we find allies? Elena thought of the town they had driven through to reach the hotel. Hollow Creek. Small and struggling, and exactly the kind of place that might understand what the Wisteria Inn was meant to be. In the same place Franklin found them, among people who remember what the sanctuary meant. The next morning, Elena drove the dead Cavalier's replacement, a truck Eli had somehow produced from a barn behind his own cabin, into Hollow Creek. The town was small. 300 people, maybe fewer. A main street with a general store, a post office, a diner, and a church. The kind of place that was dying slowly as young people left for cities and opportunity. Elena walked into the diner alone. Conversation stopped the moment she entered. Every eye in the place turned to study the pregnant stranger with the exhausted face and the determined walk. A woman behind the counter, heavy-set and gray-haired, watched her approach. "You must be the one who inherited Franklin's place." Elena nodded. "Word travels fast." "Only thing that travels fast in a town this small." "I'm May Patterson. I own this establishment. What can I get you?" "Coffee and information if you're willing to share it." May poured the coffee without comment. Then she leaned on the counter and studied Elena with eyes that had seen decades of mountain life. "Franklin Ashford saved my family. 1962. My daddy lost his job, my mama was dying of cancer, and we had nowhere to go. The Wisteria Inn took us in for 8 months. Didn't charge us a penny, fed us, got mama to a doctor, gave daddy work until he found something permanent." May paused. "That man spent his whole life helping people like us. And now they say you're his heir. They say you're going to fight Richard Hale for the land." "I am. You know what you're up against." "I'm learning." May was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to the diner full of watching faces. "Everyone in this room owes something to the Wisteria Inn. Most of you are old enough to remember what that place meant before the fire. The question is, do we remember well enough to help this woman keep it alive?" No one spoke at first. Then an old man in the corner raised his hand. "Jacob Morrison. My daddy worked construction at the inn for 30 years. I can bring my boys start assessing what needs to be fixed." A woman in a nurse's uniform spoke next. "Clara Whitfield. I used to be a corporate lawyer before I burned out and moved here. If you need legal help, I'll work for free." More voices, more offers, more people standing up to declare their connection to a place that had been closed for 50 years, but clearly never forgotten. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't try to stop them. "Why?" she managed. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." May smiled. "Franklin Ashford planted seeds for 60 years, honey. He helped people without asking for anything back. He believed that compassion creates compassion. We're just proving him right." By the end of that day, Elena had a construction team, a lawyer, a doctor willing to monitor her pregnancy, and a community credit line at the general store. She had walked into Hollow Creek alone. She walked out with an army, but Richard Hale was building an army of his own. 3 days after his confrontation with Elena, he received a report from Marcus Webb that made him smile. "The property contains extensive underground spaces," Webb read. "Possible tunnels or chambers beneath the main building. Franklin Ashford was observed entering through a basement access point multiple times in his final years. The current heir has begun exploring the hotel but has not yet discovered the underground areas." Richard leaned back in his chair. He was hiding something. The old man was definitely hiding something. "Should I investigate further?" "No, not yet. Let her find it first. Let her understand what she's dealing with. And then when she's most vulnerable, we'll take everything." He dismissed Webb and turned to the window. The game was just beginning. and Richard Hale had never lost a game in his life. 2 weeks after arriving in Hollow Creek, Elena found the chamber. It happened by accident. Marco had been exploring the basement as he explored everything when he noticed that his voice echoed strangely against one particular wall. He knocked on it, heard hollow space behind, and immediately ran to find his mother. "Mama, Mama, there's a secret room. I found a secret room." Elena followed him down into the basement, flashlight in hand. The wall he indicated looked like all the others, brick and mortar and 50 years of grime. But when she knocked, she heard it too. Empty space. "Marco, get Eli. Tell him to bring tools." An hour later, with Eli's help, they broke through the false wall to reveal a narrow passage carved from living rock. "Franklin built this back in '72, Eli said quietly. "Made me help him. Swore me to secrecy. Said he'd tell me what it was for someday, but he never did." Elena stared into the darkness beyond. "Stay here with the children." "You shouldn't go alone." "I have to. Franklin's letter said I would find the rest of the truth down there. This is something I need to do myself." She descended. The passage was narrow, just wide enough for one person. The walls were rough stone carved by hand. The air grew colder with each step. After what felt like forever, the passage opened into a circular chamber. Elena stopped, stared, struggled to understand what she was seeing. The chamber was ancient, far older than the hotel. Symbols covered the walls, patterns that seemed mathematical, astronomical, significant in ways she couldn't comprehend. In the center stood a stone pedestal, empty now but clearly designed to hold something important. And on the floor near the pedestal, visible in her flashlight beam, fresh footprints in the dust. Someone had been here recently. Someone else knew about this place. Elena photographed everything, the symbols, the pedestal, the footprints that shouldn't exist. Then she noticed something Franklin's letter had mentioned, but she had overlooked. A second passage led out of the chamber, smaller, heading deeper into the mountain. From that passage came sounds. Mechanical sounds. Distant but distinct. Someone was already down here. Someone was already searching for whatever Franklin had protected. Elena's heart hammered. She wanted to explore further. She wanted to find the source of those sounds. She wanted to understand what was happening beneath her property. But she was 7 months pregnant. Her phone showed no signal. No one knew exactly where she was. She retreated. Back through the passage. Back through the basement. Back to where Eli waited with worried eyes. "What did you find?" Answers and more questions. Elena gripped his arm. "Eli, has anyone else been on this property? Anyone you didn't tell me about?" His face went pale. "There was a survey team, about a month before Franklin died. They claimed they were from the county checking property lines. I let them onto the grounds. Never saw where they went." "Did they have equipment?" "Vehicles, a van, industrial equipment. I thought it was surveying tools." Elena's blood ran cold. Richard Hale had already been here. His people had already found the chamber. They were already searching for whatever Franklin had hidden. The race had begun, and she was already behind. That night, Elena sat in the cabin with Franklin's journal, reading by candlelight while her children slept. The journal contained more than financial records. It contained theories, research. 60 years of Franklin trying to understand what he had found beneath his property. The chamber predated European settlement by centuries. The symbols appeared to be astronomical calculations of remarkable sophistication, and the pedestal had once held something, an object Franklin had removed and hidden elsewhere when he realized others were searching for it. Whatever it was, Franklin had died, protecting its location. Elena turned to the journal's final entry dated just 2 weeks before his death. "The cancer has spread too far to fight. I have weeks, perhaps days. But I am at peace. Elena will come. She will find this journal. She will understand. The object I removed from the chamber is safe. Its location is encoded in this journal for those wise enough to find it. I did not trust myself to know if it should ever be revealed. That choice belongs to my heir. I believe in you, Elena. I have always believed in you. Find the truth. Protect the sanctuary. And remember that some things are worth more than money. With all my love, Franklin." Elena closed the journal. Somewhere in these pages was a code. A map to something Franklin had considered more valuable than $200 million. And somewhere out there, Richard Hale was searching for the same thing. The war for the Wisteria Inn had truly begun. 3 weeks after discovering the chamber, Elena woke to the sound of her daughter screaming. She bolted upright in the cabin's darkness, her pregnant body protesting the sudden movement. Rosa's scream cut through the night again, high and terrified and wrong. "Mama, Mama, there's a man outside." Elena grabbed the flashlight and the baseball bat Eli had given her. She moved to the window, her heart slamming against her ribs. A figure stood at the edge of the tree line, male, tall, watching the cabin with the patience of a predator studying prey. "Sophia, take your brothers and sister to the bathroom. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say." "Mama, no, don't go out there." "Do what I tell you, now." Sophia gathered the younger children with shaking hands. The bathroom door closed. The lock clicked. Elena opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. "I see you standing there. I've already called the police. You have 30 seconds to get off my property." The figure didn't move. 20 seconds. Still nothing. 10. The figure turned and melted back into the trees without a sound. Elena stood on that porch for 20 minutes, bat-raised eyes searching the darkness. Her body trembled with adrenaline and fear and the fierce protective rage of a mother defending her young. When she finally went back inside, she found Sophia sitting against the bathroom door with her arms wrapped around her siblings. "Is he gone?" "He's gone." "Who was he?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." The next morning, Elena drove to Eli's cabin before dawn. "Someone was watching us last night, standing at the tree line. Just watching." Eli's face went hard. "Describe him." "Tall, male, that's all I could see in the dark. Could have been one of Hale's people. They've been sniffing around the edges of the property for weeks. I've chased off 3 different trucks." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you've got enough to worry about, and because I didn't think they'd get this bold." Elena grabbed his arm. "Eli, I have 4 children in that cabin. One of them is 2 years old. I need to know everything that's happening on this property. Everything." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "What else haven't you told me?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "The survey team that came before Franklin died. I saw them come out of the basement one night. They were carrying equipment, the kind of equipment you use for drilling." "Drilling?" "Core samples. They were taking core samples from beneath the hotel." Elena's blood went cold. "They know what's down there. They know something is down there. Whether they know exactly what I can't say. Why would Franklin let them onto the property?" "He didn't. I did." Eli's voice cracked. "They had papers, official-looking papers. I thought they were legitimate. By the time I realized something was wrong, they were already gone." Elena wanted to be angry. She wanted to scream at this old man who had let enemies onto her land. But the look on his face stopped her. He was already punishing himself more than she ever could. "It's done," she said finally. "What matters now is what we do next." Clara Whitfield arrived at the cabin 2 hours later with news that made the situation worse. Richard Hale filed his lawsuits this morning, 7 of them, in 3 different courts. Elena took the documents Clara handed her. Legal language swam before her eyes. What are they claiming? Everything they can think of. Mental incompetence on Franklin's part. Questions about your identity as an heir. Challenges to the trust structure. Environmental concerns about the property. Even a claim that Franklin acquired some of the land through fraud in the 1970s. Is any of it legitimate? No, but that's not the point. The point is to bury you in legal fees. To drag this out until you can't afford to fight anymore. It's a war of attrition. How much is this going to cost? Clara hesitated. If we fight every claim through to conclusion, millions, maybe tens of millions. I don't have tens of millions. I don't have tens of dollars. I know. That's why we need to be smart. Clara pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. Some of these claims are so weak they'll get dismissed immediately. Others we can consolidate. A few we might be able to counterattack. Counterattack how? Richard Hale's companies have a history of environmental violations, safety violations, and political corruption. If we can prove he's using the legal system to harass you, we might be able to turn the tables. Do it. Elena, I need you to understand something. This is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. Harder than losing your husband. Harder than raising 4 children alone. Hale has resources you can't imagine. He's going to come at you from every direction. I know. And you still want to fight. Elena thought of Franklin's letter, of Maria's photograph, of 60 years of love that had waited for this moment. I don't want to fight. I have to fight. There's a difference. The first lawsuit was dismissed in 2 weeks. A judge in Richmond took one look at the mental incompetency claim and threw it out with prejudice, publicly rebuking Hale's lawyers for wasting the court's time. Small victory. Elena allowed herself to feel it for exactly one day. Then the real attacks began. A reporter from a Richmond newspaper showed up at the cabin asking questions about Elena's past. Had she ever been arrested? Had she ever been on welfare? Was it true she had abandoned her children to pursue this inheritance? Elena slammed the door in his face. The next day, an article appeared online. Mystery heir to Virginia fortune has troubled past. The story was full of insinuations and anonymous sources and carefully worded lies that stayed just this side of defamation. Comments flooded in. People calling her a gold digger, a scam artist, an unfit mother. Strangers who had never met her passing judgment on her entire life. Sophia found the article. She was sitting at the table with her tablet when Elena came in, her face pale and shocked. "Mama, why are people saying these things about you?" Elena took the tablet and read the article. Her hands shook with rage. "Because some people will do anything to win. They can't beat me in court, so they're trying to beat me in public opinion. But it's not true. None of it is true. I know, mija, and eventually everyone else will know too." "How?" "By proving them wrong. Every single day in every single way until the truth is all that's left." The town of Hollow Creek rallied around her. May Patterson organized a counter-campaign. Longtime residents wrote letters to the newspaper defending Elena and attacking the anonymous sources. Jacob Morrison's construction crew wore t-shirts that said, "We stand with Elena," while they worked on the hotel. Clara filed a defamation lawsuit against the newspaper. The article was taken down within 48 hours. Another small victory. But Elena knew they were playing defense when they needed to be playing offense. "We need to find out what Hale's people took from beneath the hotel," she told Clara. "Those core samples, whatever they learned, it's the key to everything. How do we find that out? I don't know yet, but I'm going to figure it out." The answer came from an unexpected source. 2 days later, a woman appeared at the diner where Elena was meeting with May. She was young, maybe late 20s, with nervous eyes and hands that wouldn't stop moving. "Are you Elena Moreno?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Jennifer Walsh. I worked for Dominion Mining until last week. I was Richard Hale's personal assistant." Elena's heart rate spiked. "What do you want to help you and to hurt him?" Jennifer slid into the booth across from Elena. "I've seen what he does, how he operates, the things he's willing to do to get what he wants. I can't be part of it anymore." "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't. Not yet. But I have documents, internal communications, proof that the survey team that came to your property was sent by Hale, proof that they were looking for something specific beneath the hotel, and proof that they found it." Elena leaned forward. "What did they find?" Jennifer glanced around the diner, then lowered her voice. "They found a second chamber, deeper than the one you've discovered, and inside that chamber they found evidence of something Hale is willing to kill for." "What kind of evidence?" "Documents, historical documents, proving that the land beneath the Wisteria Inn contains not just rare earth minerals, but something else, something that could be worth more than the minerals themselves." "What are you talking about?" Jennifer pulled a flash drive from her pocket and slid it across the table. "Everything I have is on here. Communications between Hale and his lawyers, reports from the survey team, geological assessments, and something else, a reference to an object, something Franklin Ashford removed from the second chamber decades ago and hid somewhere on the property. Hale has been searching for it since before Franklin died. He believed that once Franklin was gone, it would be easier to find." Elena took the flash drive. "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "Because I have a daughter. She's 4 years old, and I don't want her to grow up knowing her mother helped destroy an innocent woman and her children so a billionaire could get richer." She stood to leave. "One more thing," she said. "Hale knows you've been to the first chamber. He has people watching the property. He knows you're getting close. And he's getting desperate. Desperate men do dangerous things. Be careful, Elena. He's not going to stop until he gets what he wants, or until someone stops him, permanently." Jennifer walked out of the diner and disappeared. Elena never saw her again. That night, Elena and Clara reviewed the contents of the flash drive. It was everything Jennifer had promised, and more. Internal emails showed that Hale had been planning to acquire the Wisteria Inn property for over a decade. He had tried repeatedly to buy Franklin out. When that failed, he had begun looking for other ways in. The survey team had been sent illegally using forged government documents. They had spent 3 days on the property discovering not only the first chamber, but drilling through to a second, deeper chamber that Franklin apparently hadn't known existed. In that second chamber, they found something that made Hale's interest in the property skyrocket. Historical documents dating back to the 1780s. Land grants signed by George Washington himself. Evidence that the property contained not just mineral rights, but rights to underground waterways that fed half the county. Water rights. In a region facing increasing drought conditions. Worth potentially more than the minerals themselves. This is why he wants it so badly, Clara breathed. It's not just about the rare earth deposits, it's about controlling the water supply for 3 counties. Can he legally do that? If he owns the land, he owns whatever's beneath it, including the aquifer. He could charge whatever he wants for water access. He could control the entire region. Elena felt sick. Franklin knew. He knew what was at stake. That's why he protected it so carefully. And that's why Hale is willing to do anything to get it. We're not just fighting for your inheritance anymore, Elena. We're fighting for the future of everyone who lives here. The revelation changed everything. Clara filed new motions in court citing the illegal survey and the forged documents. She demanded sanctions against Dominion Mining. She contacted the state attorney general's office with evidence of corporate malfeasance. The town of Hollow Creek, when they learned what was at stake, transformed from supporters into soldiers. Farmers who depended on the aquifer for their crops showed up at town meetings demanding action. Local politicians who had been neutral suddenly found themselves forced to take sides. The regional newspaper, different from the one that had attacked Elena, ran a series of investigative articles about Dominion Mining's history of environmental destruction. Richard Hale's carefully constructed image began to crack, but he wasn't finished fighting. 6 weeks after Jennifer's revelation, Elena woke to find the cabin surrounded by cars. Not police cars, not Hale's SUVs, ordinary sedans with government plates. A man in a suit knocked on the door. Mrs. Moreno, I'm David Chen from Child Protective Services. We've received complaints about the welfare of your children. Elena's blood turned to ice. What complaints? Anonymous complaints? Allegations of neglect? Living in unsafe conditions? Failure to provide adequate medical care? He held up a clipboard. I'm required by law to investigate. This is harassment. Richard Hale is using your agency to attack me. Ma'am, I don't know anything about Richard Hale. I just know that allegations have been made and I need to see your children. Elena wanted to slam the door, wanted to scream, wanted to fight, but she knew that would only make things worse. Come in, she said. See for yourself that my children are healthy and loved and safer than they've ever been. David Chen spent 3 hours in the cabin. He interviewed each child separately. He inspected the living conditions. He reviewed medical records and school attendance and food supplies. At the end, he closed his clipboard and looked at Elena. Mrs. Moreno, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen neglect, I've seen abuse, I've seen children in genuine danger. He paused. What I see here is a mother who loves her children and is doing everything in her power to provide for them. So the complaint is dismissed. The complaint is being referred to my supervisors as potentially fraudulent. I don't know who filed it or why, but they wasted my time and yours and they traumatized your children unnecessarily. I'm sorry. After he left, Elena sat on the cabin floor and cried. Sophia found her there, wrapping thin arms around her mother's shaking shoulders. Mama, what happened? Nothing, mija. We won, again. Then why are you crying? Because winning hurts sometimes, and because I'm so tired of fighting. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that reminded Elena why she could never give up. Papa used to say that the only fights worth having are the ones you're scared of losing. He said courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and fighting anyway. Elena pulled her daughter close. When did you get so smart? I learned from watching you. The 8th month of pregnancy arrived with complications. Elena had been pushing too hard for too long. The stress, the sleepless nights, the constant battle on multiple fronts had taken a toll her body could no longer hide. Dr. Hernandez, the town physician who had been monitoring her pregnancy for free, delivered the news with a grave face. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. The baby is stressed. You need bed rest, Elena. Complete bed rest. For at least the next 2 weeks. I can't. The lawsuits, the property, Hale is circling like a shark. If I stop moving, he wins. If you don't stop moving, you could lose the baby, or your own life. Is that what you want your children to remember? That their mother worked herself to death? The words hit like a physical blow. 2 weeks. At minimum. Probably longer. And I mean real rest. Not resting while you read legal documents and make phone calls. Actual rest. Elena looked at her swollen belly, felt her daughter kick against her palm. She had been so focused on the fight that she had almost forgotten what she was fighting for. "Okay," she whispered. 2 weeks. Clara took over the legal battle. May coordinated the community support. Eli increased security on the property. Sophia, impossibly mature for her 8 years, managed the household with help from the town's women who rotated through to cook and clean and care for the younger children. Elena lay in bed and hated every minute of it, but she also did something she hadn't done since arriving in Virginia. She thought. Franklin's journal still held secrets she hadn't unraveled. His letter mentioned a code, a map to whatever he had hidden. In the frantic pace of the past 2 months, she hadn't had time to look for it. Now she had nothing but time. She read the journal from beginning to end, then again, then a third time. On the 4th reading, she noticed something. Every chapter began with a sentence that seemed slightly off. Not grammatically wrong, but awkward. Out of place with Franklin's otherwise elegant writing style. She copied down the first word of each opening sentence. THEKEYISWHEREMA RIASHEARTRESTS. The key is where Maria's heart rests. Elena's own heart stopped. Maria, her grandmother, dead since 2008, buried in San Diego. Whatever Franklin had hidden, the key to finding it was with the woman he had loved for 60 years. Elena grabbed her phone and called her mother. "Mama, I need you to do something for me. I need you to visit Grandma's grave." "Elena, what's wrong? Is the baby okay?" "The baby's fine. I just need you to look at Grandma's headstone. Is there anything unusual about it? Any inscription you don't recognize?" Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "Then there's a line I always wondered about. Your grandmother left specific instructions for what should be carved on her stone. Most of it made sense, but one line never did. What does it say, Pastinin? Where the wisteria blooms, eternal truth waits for those who remember love. I thought it was poetry. Your grandmother loved poetry." Elena closed her eyes. Franklin and Maria, separated for 60 years, but planning even then for this moment. "Mama, I need you to do something else. I need you to look at the grave carefully, around the headstone, beneath the flowers, anywhere something might be hidden." "Elena, what's going on?" "I think Grandma has been keeping Franklin's secret all along, even in death." Her mother called back 4 hours later. "There's a small box, metal, buried in the flower bed at the base of the headstone. It was wrapped in plastic like someone wanted it to survive for years." "What's inside?" "A key, an old brass key, and a note that says for Elena when she is ready to understand." Elena started crying. She couldn't help it. Franklin had known. He had planned everything. He had trusted Maria to keep his secret even beyond the grave, waiting for the heir who would finally bring their love story to its conclusion. "Mama, I need that key. Can you send it overnight?" "I'll drive it to you myself. I'm leaving in an hour." 3 days later, Elena's mother arrived in Hollow Creek with a small metal box and a lifetime of questions. But before Elena could open the box, before she could discover what the key unlocked, something happened that changed everything. Her water broke 6 weeks early. The baby was coming. The pain hit Elena like lightning through her spine. She doubled over, clutching her belly, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Her mother caught her before she hit the floor. "Elena, what's happening?" The baby's coming. It's too early. It's way too early." Sophia appeared in the doorway, her face white with terror. "Mama, call Dr. Hernandez now. Tell him we need an ambulance." But even as she said the words, Elena knew there wasn't time. The contractions were coming too fast, too hard, too close together. This baby wasn't waiting for anyone. Her mother took charge with the calm efficiency of a woman who had raised 5 children of her own. "Sophia, get towels, hot water, all the clean sheets you can find. Marco, take Lucas and Rosa to Eli's cabin. Run, don't look back." "But Mama." "Go." The children scattered. Elena's mother helped her to the bed, positioning her as comfortably as possible. "I've delivered babies before Mija, back in Mexico before the hospitals, before the doctors. Women have been doing this for thousands of years." "It's too early. She's too small. What if something's wrong?" "Then we deal with it. But right now, you need to breathe. You need to focus. Your daughter needs you strong." The next 4 hours were the longest of Elena's life. Pain beyond anything she had experienced with her other children. Fear that wrapped around her throat and squeezed. The desperate prayer of a mother who couldn't lose another person she loved. Dr. Hernandez arrived somewhere in the middle of it all, his medical bag in hand, his face grim but determined. She's fully dilated. The baby's coming whether we're ready or not. Is the baby okay? We'll know in a few minutes. Right now, I need you to push. Elena pushed. She screamed. She begged God and Miguel and Franklin and anyone else who might be listening to let her daughter survive. At 3:47 a.m., Frances Maria Moreno entered the world. She was small, so impossibly small. Her cry was weak, more like a kitten's mew than a baby's wail. But she was alive. Dr. Hernandez worked quickly clearing her airways, checking her vital signs, wrapping her in the warmest blankets they had. She's premature but stable. We need to get her to a hospital, but for now she's breathing on her own. Elena reached for her daughter with trembling hands. The baby was placed on her chest, skin to skin, heartbeat to heartbeat. Frances? Elena whispered. After Franklin and Maria. The love that waited 60 years to bring us here. Her mother was crying. Sophia, who had refused to leave, was crying. Even Dr. Hernandez looked away to wipe his eyes. She's a fighter, he said. Just like her mother. The ambulance arrived at dawn. Elena refused to leave. Found without the metal box her mother had brought from San Diego. It sat beside her in the ambulance, its contents still unknown, its secrets still waiting. The hospital in Richmond was 40 miles away. Frances was placed in the NICU, hooked to monitors and warming devices, her tiny body fighting for every breath. Elena couldn't be with her. The doctors needed space to work. All she could do was sit in the waiting room and pray. Clara found her there 6 hours later. I came as soon as I heard. How is she? Alive. For now. They say the next 48 hours are critical. Clara sat beside her and took her hand. The lawsuits can wait. Everything can wait. Your daughter is what matters. No. Elena's voice was hoarse but firm. Richard Hale isn't going to wait. He's going to see this as an opportunity, a weakness to exploit. I know how men like him think. Elena, you just gave birth. You nearly died. And if I stop fighting now, my daughter will grow up with nothing. I didn't survive this long to give up when the finish line is in sight. She reached for the metal box and finally opened it. Inside was the brass key her mother had described. Old, ornate, clearly designed for a specific lock. And beneath the key, a letter in Franklin's handwriting. My dearest Elena, if you are reading this, then you have found what Maria kept safe from me all these years. She was the only person I trusted with this secret. Even in death, she protected what we both loved. The key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank of Richmond, box number 1947. Inside that box, you will find the documents that prove everything, not just the mineral rights, not just the water rights, but something older, something that changes who owns this land legally and permanently. In 1783, George Washington granted the original Ashford family perpetual rights to this land in exchange for services rendered during the Revolutionary War. Those rights have never been legally transferred. Every subsequent owner, including my family, has been a steward, not an owner, but the grant contained a clause. If a direct descendant of the original Ashford line married someone from outside the original colonies, and that marriage produced an heir, the perpetual rights would transfer permanently to that heir's bloodline. Franklin Ashford married no one. But he loved Maria Delgado, and Maria's granddaughter had children. You are the fulfillment of a prophecy written 240 years ago, Elena. The land is not just your inheritance. It is your bare birthright granted by the father of this nation himself. The documents in the safety deposit box prove this. They have been authenticated by historians. They will hold up in any court. Richard Hale can file 1,000 lawsuits. It won't matter. The land belongs to you by rights older than the Constitution itself. Use this wisely. Protect what I have protected, and know that Maria and I will be watching from wherever love goes when it finally finds peace. Forever yours. Franklin? Elena read the letter 3 times. Then she started laughing. Clara stared at her with growing concern. Elena, are you okay? He planned everything. From the very beginning, he knew exactly what he was doing. What do you mean? Elena handed her the letter, watched Clara's expression transform from confusion to shock to something like awe. A Revolutionary War land grant signed by George Washington. Elena, if this is real... It's real. Franklin wouldn't lie about this. He spent 60 years making sure everything was in place. Hale's lawyers are going to have a stroke. Good. Clara was already making phone calls. Historians, document experts, constitutional lawyers. The web of protection Franklin had created began to reveal itself, each thread connecting to another, each piece of the puzzle sliding into place. Elena stayed by Frances's incubator for 48 hours straight. She talked to her daughter constantly, told her about the hotel, about Franklin and Maria, about the siblings who were waiting to meet her, about the future that was finally within reach. "You're named for love that never gave up," Elena whispered. "You carry 60 years of patience in your blood. You're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay." On the third day, Frances opened her eyes. They were brown, dark, and deep. Maria's eyes, Elena's eyes. The doctor said she was stabilizing. The crisis was passing. In a few weeks, she would be strong enough to go home. Elena finally allowed herself to sleep. She woke to find Richard Hale standing at the foot of her hospital bed. "Get out." "Mrs. Moreno, I heard about your daughter. I wanted to offer my congratulations." "Get out." Richard didn't move. His smile was thin and cold and utterly without warmth. "I also wanted to inform you that while you've been here, my teams have been busy. We've filed 12 new motions in court. We've initiated eminent domain proceedings on environmental grounds. And we've convinced 3 members of the county board to support rezoning the Wisteria Inn property for industrial use. It won't work." "Won't it? You're alone, Mrs. Moreno. You have no money, no power, no connections. Your baby is fighting for her life. Your other children are being cared for by strangers. How long can you keep this up?" Elena sat up in bed. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest. She didn't care. "You want to know how long I can keep this up forever? Because I have something you don't. I have a Revolutionary War land grant signed by George Washington that makes me the legal owner of that land by rights, older than your family, older than your company, older than the legal system you're trying to corrupt." Richard's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out soon enough. Now get out of my room before I call security and have you arrested for trespassing." For the first time, Elena saw something other than arrogance in Richard Hale's eyes. She saw fear. He left without another word. The documents from the safety deposit box changed everything. Clara presented them to the court 3 weeks after Frances was born. The land grant was authenticated by 3 separate historians. Constitutional scholars confirmed its legal validity. The clause about marriage and heirs was unprecedented but binding. The judge took one look at the evidence and issued a preliminary ruling. Based on the documents presented, this court finds that Elena Rosa Moreno holds valid claim to the Wisteria Inn property under rights predating the formation of the United States government. All pending lawsuits regarding ownership are hereby suspended pending full review. Richard Hale's lawyers filed immediate objections. Appeals, motions for reconsideration, emergency stays. None of them worked. The historical evidence was too strong. The legal framework was too solid. Franklin had spent 50 years building a case that couldn't be broken. One by one, the lawsuits began to collapse. The mental incompetency claim was dismissed with prejudice. The identity challenge was thrown out when DNA evidence proved Elena's connection to the Ashford line through Maria. The environmental concerns were revealed as fabricated by experts paid by Dominion Mining. Each victory was small. Each victory was hard-won. But each victory brought Elena closer to the end. Frances came home from the hospital 4 weeks after her birth. Elena carried her into the cabin, surrounded by her other children, her mother, and half the town of Hollow Creek. The baby was still small, but growing stronger every day. "This is your home," Elena told her sleeping daughter. "This is where you belong." Sophia touched her baby sister's cheek with gentle fingers. "She's so beautiful, Mama." "She is. She's perfect." "Are we safe now? Is the fighting over?" Elena looked at her eldest daughter, 8 years old and carrying the weight of wars no child should know about. "Almost, mija, almost." The final battle came in May, 3 months after Frances was born. Richard Hale had exhausted his legal options. Every lawsuit had failed. Every appeal had been denied. The land grant had been upheld by 3 different courts. He was finished. Everyone knew it. But cornered animals are the most dangerous. Elena woke one night to the smell of smoke. She bolted upright, her heart already racing. Through the cabin window, she saw flames licking at the edge of the Wisteria Inn. "Fire, everyone, wake up! There's a fire!" She grabbed Frances from her crib. Sophia was already moving, pulling Lucas and Rosa toward the door. Marco stood frozen, staring at the flames with wide eyes. "Marco, move now." They ran out into the night. Elena's mother took the children and headed for Eli's cabin while Elena grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "Fire at the Wisteria Inn, Hollow Creek. Send everyone you have." She hung up and stared at the burning building. 50 years of history, 60 years of love, 4 generations of sanctuary, going up in flames. Just like before. Just like 1973. Elena's blood turned to ice. He's doing it again? Hale is burning it down rather than let me have it. She ran toward the fire. Elena, stop, you'll be killed. She didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Everything Franklin had protected was in that building. The journals, the documents, the evidence of crimes that could put Richard Hale in prison. The heat hit her like a wall. The smoke filled her lungs. But she pushed forward into the building through the lobby toward room 217 where the most important documents were stored. The fire hadn't reached the second floor yet. She had minutes, maybe less. She kicked open the door to room 217, grabbed the fireproof safe from the closet, dragged it toward the stairs. The floor groaned beneath her feet. Timbers cracked overhead. Come on, come on. She made it to the first floor. The fire was spreading faster now, eating through the old wood like a hungry beast. The front door was blocked by flames. The service entrance. The same one she had used that first night. Elena dragged the safe through smoke that blinded her, through heat that scorched her skin, through a building that was dying around her. She burst out the back door and collapsed on the ground, coughing, gasping, clutching the safe that contained everything. Behind her, the Wisteria Inn burned. Eli found her there minutes later. He dragged her away from the building just as a section of roof collapsed. Are you insane? You could have died. I had to save it. The documents. The proof. What proof? The proof that Richard Hale ordered this fire, just like his father ordered the fire in 1973. Elena's eyes were streaming from smoke, but her mind was crystal clear. Franklin kept records. Every threat. Every suspicious incident. Every connection between the Hale family and the original fire. It's all in this safe, and now we have a second fire that follows the exact same pattern. Eli stared at her. You think you can prove Hale did this? I don't think. I know. The fire trucks arrived too late to save the hotel. By morning, the Wisteria Inn was a smoking ruin for the second time in its history. But Elena had saved what mattered, and she had something else. The fire investigator found evidence of accelerant at multiple points around the building. Professional job. Clearly arson. Security cameras from Eli's cabin, which Elena hadn't known existed until that night, showed a van approaching the property at 2 a.m. The van was registered to a shell company that Clara traced back to Dominion Mining within 48 hours. The driver was Marcus Webb, Richard Hale's head of security, the same man who had followed Elena from Baltimore, the same man who had been watching her family for months. Clara presented the evidence to the state attorney general. Webb was arrested the next day. He broke within hours of interrogation, offering to testify against Richard Hale in exchange for a reduced sentence. Hale ordered everything, Webb told investigators. The surveillance, the intimidation, both fires, the one in 73 and this one. He's been trying to get that land for 50 years. He wasn't going to let some pregnant waitress stop him. Richard Hale was arrested at his office the following morning. The charges included arson, conspiracy, fraud, witness tampering, and attempted murder. The attempted murder charge came from the fact that Elena's children had been in the cabin near the hotel. If the fire had spread differently, they could have been killed. The trial was scheduled for September, but Richard Hale never made it to trial. 3 weeks after his arrest, he was found dead in his cell. The official cause was suicide, but Elena never believed it. Men like Richard Hale didn't kill themselves. They were killed by the people they had betrayed, by the secrets they had kept, by the enemies they had made during decades of ruthless climbing. Whoever had killed him. Justice had been served. The war was finally over. Elena stood in the ashes of the Wisteria Inn on a June morning, her baby daughter in her arms, her other children gathered around her. The building was gone, but the land remained, the rights remained, the legacy remained. What do we do now, Mama? Sophia asked. Elena looked at the ruins, then at the mountains beyond, then at the town of Hollow Creek that had rallied behind her when she had nothing. We rebuild. Better than before, exactly what Franklin would have wanted. But how? The hotel is gone. Buildings can be rebuilt, mija. What matters is what they stand for. Elena pulled her children close. The Wisteria Inn was never about the building. It was about the sanctuary, about welcoming people who have nowhere else to go, about compassion that creates more compassion. She thought of her grandmother Maria, of Franklin waiting 60 years for love that never came, of a legacy that had survived fire and greed and everything meant to destroy it. We're going to build something new, something better, and we're going to prove that Richard Hale failed. That everything he did, everything his family did for 50 years only made us stronger. Marco tugged at her sleeve. Can I help design it? I have ideas. You can all help. This is our family's legacy now, all of ours. In the distance, the sun rose over the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and promise. The Wisteria Inn was gone, but its spirit was alive, and Elena Moreno, who had arrived in Virginia with nothing but 4 children and a desperate hope, was finally ready to claim everything she had inherited. The first shovel broke ground on a September morning, exactly 1 year after Elena had arrived in Hollow Creek with nothing but 4 children and a dying car. She stood at the edge of the construction site, Frances balanced on her hip, watching as Jacob Morrison and his crew began transforming ashes into something new. The insurance money from the fire had come through. The settlement from Dominion Mining's criminal case had added more. And donations from across the country from people who had heard her story and wanted to be part of something meaningful had poured in beyond anything she had imagined. "You ready for this?" Clara asked, standing beside her. "I've been ready my whole life, I just didn't know it." Sophia appeared at her elbow holding a piece of paper, covered in her careful handwriting. "Mama, I made a list of all the families who contacted us, the ones who need help. There are 47 already, and we haven't even opened yet." Elena took the list and felt her heart crack open. 47 families. Mothers like her. Children like hers. People who had touched the bottom and were reaching for anything that might pull them back up. "We'll help them all," she said. "Every single one." "But Mama, we don't have enough rooms yet." "Then we'll find other ways. Temporary housing, food assistance, legal help, whatever they need until we can do more." Sophia nodded, her young face serious with purpose. "I can help organize it. I've been reading about how shelters work. I have ideas." Elena pulled her daughter close. This child who had grown up too fast, who had carried too much, who had become her partner in everything. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mija." "Yes, you could. You just would have been more tired." Elena laughed. It was the first real laugh she had experienced in months. It felt like releasing a breath she had been holding since Miguel died. The construction took 18 months. Elena had insisted on doing it right. Not cutting corners, not rushing. Building something that would stand for another century, that would welcome thousands of families, but that would fulfill the promise Franklin Ashford had made when he first inherited the property from his own father. She worked alongside the construction crew when they would let her learning the building from the inside out. She knew every beam, every wire, every pipe. She knew which rooms faced the sunrise and which caught the afternoon light. She knew where the children would play and where the mothers would cry and where healing would begin for people who had forgotten what healing felt like. Her own children grew during those 18 months. Sophia turned 10 and took over managing the volunteer database with a competence that impressed adults 3 times her age. She had her father's organizational mind and her mother's stubborn determination. Marco turned 8 and became the unofficial historian of the project, documenting every stage of construction with photographs and journal entries. He had discovered that the chamber beneath the property contained artifacts from indigenous peoples who had lived in these mountains for thousands of years. He was working with a university archaeologist to preserve and study them. Lucas turned 6 and finally began speaking freely again. The stability of Hollow Creek, the routine of school and community, had healed something that had been broken inside him. He still had nightmares, sometimes still crawled into Elena's bed when the darkness felt too heavy. But he was learning to trust that the world wouldn't keep taking things from him. Rosa turned 4 and started kindergarten, her fearless personality making her instantly popular. She told everyone who would listen about her baby sister, about the hotel her mama was building, about the bad man who had tried to hurt them and failed. Frances grew from a fragile, premature baby into a healthy, curious toddler. She took her first steps in the half-finished lobby of the new Wisteria Inn, her small hands reaching for Elena's fingers, her brown eyes bright with the same determination that had carried her mother through everything. "She's going to be something special," Elena's mother said, watching her granddaughter explore the construction site with fearless curiosity. "They're all something special." True, but Frances has something extra, something old, like she carries the memory of people she never met. Elena knew what her mother meant. Sometimes when Frances looked at her with those dark eyes, Elena saw Maria, saw Franklin, saw 60 years of love that had finally found its purpose. The grand opening was scheduled for March, or exactly 2 years after Elena had first seen the ruined hotel emerging from the fog. Invitations went out to everyone who had helped along the way. The people of Hollow Creek, the lawyers and historians who had proved her claim, the journalists who had told her story, the families who had already received help through the temporary programs Elena had established. 3 days before the opening, Elena received an unexpected visitor. Thomas Morrison Franklin's attorney arrived at the cabin with a briefcase and an expression Elena couldn't read. "Mrs. Moreno, I have something Franklin asked me to deliver on the day the sanctuary reopened." "Another letter?" Not exactly. Morrison opened the briefcase and removed a small wooden box ornately carved, clearly very old. Franklin gave this to me in 1995 with specific instructions. I was to keep it sealed until either his heir restored the Wisteria Inn or 25 years passed, whichever came first. Elena took the box with trembling hands. What's inside? I don't know. Franklin never told me. He said only the right person would understand. After Morrison left, Elena sat alone in the cabin she had called home for 2 years. The box felt warm in her hands, as if something living pulsed inside it. She opened it. Inside, resting on faded velvet, was a ring. A simple gold band, with a small diamond, clearly antique, clearly meant for someone precious. Beneath the ring was a photograph. Franklin and Maria young and in love, standing in front of the Wisteria Inn in its prime. On Maria's hand, visible if you looked closely, was the same ring Elena now held, and beneath the photograph a final note. This ring belonged to my grandmother. She gave it to me when I was 20 years old and told me to save it for the woman I would marry. I gave it to Maria in 1953. She wore it for 3 days before my family forced her to leave. She tried to return it. I told her to keep it to remember that someone had loved her enough to offer everything. She kept it until she died. Her daughter found it among her possessions and sent it to me without understanding what it meant. I've kept it for 60 years waiting. It belongs to you now, Elena. Not because of what it's worth, but because of what it represents. Love that survives. Hope that endures. A promise kept across generations. Wear it if you wish. Or give it to one of your daughters someday. But know that it carries the blessing of 2 people who never stopped believing that their love would find its way home. Forever. Franklin and Maria Elena slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. The grand opening exceeded every expectation. 300 people filled the new Wisteria Inn, exploring rooms designed with care and purpose, admiring the photographs that lined the walls showing the property's history, meeting the families who had already begun receiving help through Elena's programs. The building was beautiful, not in the grand, imposing way of the original hotel, but in a warm, welcoming way that invited people to feel at home. Every detail had been chosen to comfort rather than impress. Every space had been designed to heal rather than showcase. The sanctuary wing held 20 rooms for families in crisis. The community wing held spaces for job training, counseling, childcare, and legal assistance. The public wing held rooms for paying guests whose fees would help fund the charitable work. It was everything Franklin had dreamed of, rebuilt for a new century. Elena stood at the podium in the main gathering hall, her 5 children arranged in the front row, her mother beside them, the people of Hollow Creek filling every seat. 2 years ago, she began, I was homeless. I had 4 children, a baby on the way, and nothing but desperation to my name. I received a letter from a man I had never met telling me I had inherited something. I thought it was a mistake. I thought someone was playing a cruel joke on a woman who had already lost everything. She paused, looking at the faces before her. But it wasn't a mistake. Franklin Ashford had been watching over my family for 60 years, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right person. He chose me not because I was strong, but because I had survived things that should have destroyed me. He believed that only someone who had known real suffering could understand how to help others who were suffering. Elena held up the ring on her finger, catching the light. This ring belonged to my grandmother Maria. Franklin gave it to her in 1953 before his family tore them apart. She kept it until she died. Now it belongs to me, and someday it will belong to my daughter Frances, who carries both their names. Tears were flowing freely now. Elena didn't try to stop them. The Wisteria Inn was never about money. It was never about land or mineral rights or legal battles. It was about love. Love that refused to die. Love that planned and waited and believed across 3 generations. Love that built a sanctuary for people who had nowhere else to go. She looked at her children. At Sophia, who had become her partner. At Marco, who had found his passion in history. At Lucas, who had learned to speak again. At Rosa, who had never lost her joy. At Frances, who was the living proof that miracles existed. I didn't save the Wisteria Inn, Elena said. The Wisteria Inn saved me. It gave me purpose when I had none. It gave me community when I was alone. It gave me hope when I had forgotten what hope felt like. She spread her arms to encompass the building around her. This is Franklin's legacy. This is Maria's legacy. And now it is our legacy. All of ours. Every person who helped build this place. Every family who will find shelter here. Every child who will grow up knowing that someone believed they were worth fighting for. The Wisteria Inn is open, and it will never close again. The applause that followed shook the chandeliers. After the ceremony, after the crowds had dispersed and the children had been put to bed, Elena walked through the empty halls of her new sanctuary. She found herself in the room that corresponded to the old room 217. Same location, same view of the mountains, same sense of something sacred. On the desk, she had placed the photograph of Franklin and Maria, young, in love, full of hope for a future they would never share.
Hide it.
I did it, she whispered to them. I found the truth. I protected what you protected. I built what you dreamed of. She touched the photograph gently. I wish you could see it. I wish you could see your great-great-great-granddaughter sleeping down the hall. I wish you could meet the people who are going to find healing here. I wish you could know that everything you suffered, everything you sacrificed, meant something. The room was silent, but Elena felt something shift in the air, a warmth that had no source, a presence that had no form. Thank you, she said, for believing in me before I believed in myself, for giving me a reason to keep fighting, for showing me that love doesn't end just because people die. She stayed in that room until dawn began breaking over the mountains. Then she went downstairs to begin the first full day of the Wisteria Inn's new life. The first family arrived at noon. Maria Gonzalez, 28 years old, with 3 children under 6 and bruises she tried to hide beneath long sleeves. Her husband had put her in the hospital twice. The third time she had fled with nothing but her children and the clothes they were wearing. Elena met her at the door personally. Welcome to the Wisteria Inn. You're safe now. Maria broke down crying. Her children clung to her legs, scared and confused and too young to understand what was happening. Elena knelt to their level. My name is Elena. I have 5 children too. Would you like to meet them? They're very excited to have new friends. The smallest child, a girl about Rosa's age, looked at Elena with wide eyes. Is this our new house? For as long as you need it, sweetheart. For as long as you need. She led them inside. Behind her, more cars were pulling into the parking lot. More families. More mothers with nowhere else to go. More children who needed to know that someone cared whether they lived or died. Sophia appeared at Elena's elbow. Mama, we have 3 more families arriving today, and Dr. Hernandez is here for the medical screenings, and Clara needs you to sign some documents for the scholarship fund. I'll be there in a minute, mija. Also, a reporter from the New York Times is here. She wants to interview you about the sanctuary model. She says other cities want to replicate what we've built. Elena paused. Other cities? She says what you've done here could become a national movement, a new way of thinking about helping families in crisis. Elena looked around at the building that had risen from ashes, at the families finding shelter, at the community that had formed around a shared purpose. Franklin had dreamed of a sanctuary, but maybe the dream was bigger than even he had imagined. Tell the reporter I'll be with her in an hour. First I need to make sure Mrs. Gonzalez and her children are settled. Sophia nodded and hurried off to manage the growing chaos. Elena turned back to Maria Gonzalez, who was still standing in the lobby, looking around, with an expression of disbelief. I can't pay for this, Maria whispered. I don't have any money. I don't have anything. You don't need to pay. You don't need to have anything. You just need to be here. Why would you help strangers? Elena thought about the question. It was the same question she had asked May Patterson 2 years ago. The same question that had led her to understand what the Wisteria Inn was truly about. Because someone helped me when I had nothing. And someone helped her. And someone helped him. Compassion creates compassion, Maria. It's not charity, it's community. We take care of each other because that's what humans are supposed to do. Maria's tears hadn't stopped, but something in her face had changed. The fear was still there. But now there was something else too. Hope. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. Just get back on your feet. Find your strength again. And someday when you can help someone else who needs it. Maria nodded slowly. I can do that. I know you can. Now let me show you your room. The Wisteria Inn operated for 5 years before Elena realized that it had become something more than a sanctuary. It had become a movement. The New York Times article had sparked national attention. Other communities wanted to build their own versions of the Wisteria Inn. Foundations wanted to fund similar projects. Politicians wanted to study the model. Elena traveled to conferences. She consulted with other organizers. She testified before congressional committees about the intersection of housing policy, domestic violence prevention, and community development. Through it all, she kept the Wisteria Inn at the center of everything. The sanctuary she had built continued to grow. What had started as 20 rooms expanded to 40, then 60. The programs multiplied. Job training, financial literacy, trauma counseling, legal advocacy, childcare, education support. Every family that came through the doors received whatever they needed to rebuild their lives. And every family that left stronger than they arrived proved that the model worked. Sophia graduated from high school at 16, 2 years early, and enrolled in college to study nonprofit management. She planned to take over the Wisteria Inn someday to continue what her mother had started. Marco received a full scholarship to study archaeology at the University of Virginia. His work on the artifacts found beneath the property had attracted attention from researchers around the world. Lucas discovered a gift for music. He taught guitar to children in the sanctuary, helping them process trauma through creativity. His own nightmares had faded to distant memories. Rosa became an advocate for other children in crisis, speaking at schools and community events about what it meant to grow up without security and how the Wisteria Inn had changed her family's life. Francis, the miracle baby who had arrived too early and fought for every breath, grew into a fierce and compassionate child who reminded everyone of both the woman she was named for and the mother who had given her life. On the 10th anniversary of Elena's arrival in Hollow Creek, the town held a celebration. 3,000 people filled the grounds of the Wisteria Inn. Former residents who had rebuilt their lives. Community members who had supported the sanctuary from the beginning. Dignitaries and journalists and ordinary people who had heard the story and wanted to be part of something meaningful. Elena stood at the same podium where she had spoken 10 years earlier, looking out at a crowd that represented everything she had fought for. 10 years ago, she began, I drove into these mountains with 4 children, a baby on the way, and no idea what I was doing. I thought I was inheriting a useless building. I thought I was chasing a fantasy. She smiled, feeling the weight of everything that had happened since. I was wrong. I was inheriting a purpose, a legacy, a love story that had waited 60 years to find its ending. She held up her hand, showing the ring that had belonged to Maria and Franklin. This ring has been in my family for 70 years. It was given in love. It was kept in hope. It has survived fires and legal battles and everything meant to destroy it. Like the Wisteria Inn itself. Some people thought I was crazy to fight for this place. Some people thought I should take the money and run. Some people told me that a single mother with no resources couldn't stand against a corporation with unlimited funds. They were wrong. I didn't win because I was powerful. I won because I refused to give up. Because every time I fell down, someone was there to help me stand. Because this community believed in something bigger than any one person. She looked at her children, arranged in the front row as they had been 10 years earlier. Sophia was 20, now ready to start her own chapter. The others were growing into remarkable young people shaped by everything they had witnessed and survived. The Wisteria Inn has helped over 3,000 families in 10 years. We've inspired similar sanctuaries in 22 states. We've changed the way America thinks about helping people in crisis. But the numbers aren't what matters. What matters is Maria Gonzalez, who walked through our doors 10 years ago with 3 children and nothing but fear. She's a nurse practitioner now. Her oldest daughter just started college. What matters is James Washington, who lost his job and his home in the same month. He runs a construction company now that employs 15 people from this community. What matters is every child who grew up knowing that someone believed they were worth fighting for. Elena's voice broke. She let it. Franklin Ashford never got to marry the woman he loved. My grandmother Maria died without ever telling anyone about the young man who had offered her a ring. They never saw each other again after 1953. But their love built this, all of this. That's what I want you to remember. Love is not defeated by separation or time or death. It finds a way. It always finds a way. Franklin believed in me before I was born. He trusted that someday the right person would come, that his love for Maria would finally bear fruit. I am that fruit. My children are that fruit. The Wisteria Inn is that fruit. And every family we help is proof that Franklin was right to believe. She raised her hand toward the mountains that surrounded them. The land beneath this property contains minerals worth hundreds of millions of dollars, water rights that could control the future of 3 counties, power that corporations would kill to possess. I will never sell it. My children will never sell it. The Wisteria Inn will stand as long as there are families who need shelter and communities willing to provide it. That is the legacy Franklin Ashford left me. That is the legacy I leave to the future. And that is why we are all here today, not to celebrate me, to celebrate what's possible when love refuses to give up. The applause lasted 5 minutes. After the ceremony, Elena walked alone to the spot where the original Wisteria Inn had stood. The ruins had been cleared years ago, replaced by a memorial garden, where the names of everyone who had contributed to the sanctuary's creation were inscribed on stones. She found the stone with Franklin's name. Below it, Maria's name had been added, the two of them finally together. Elena knelt and touched both names. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I protected what you protected. I loved what you loved. I proved that some things are worth more than money." The wind rustled through the wisteria vines that had been replanted around the memorial. The same species that had given the hotel its name, blooming purple against the mountain skimba. "Rest now, both of you. Your work is done." She stayed there until the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and amber. Then she rose, brushed the dirt from her knees, and walked back to the new Wisteria Inn. Her children were waiting. Her community was waiting. Her purpose was waiting. And Elena Moreno, who had once been a homeless, pregnant mother with nothing but her children and her determination, knew exactly who she was. She was the guardian of a legacy 200 years old. She was the fulfillment of a love story that had waited 3 generations. She was proof that one person with nothing could change everything. And she was just getting started. The Wisteria Inn's lights glowed warm against the gathering darkness. Inside, families were sharing dinner. Children were laughing. Mothers who had arrived broken were beginning to heal. Elena walked through the front doors and into the life she had built from ashes and love and stubborn refusal to surrender. Compassion had created compassion. Hope had created hope. And a legacy that should have died with Franklin Ashford was alive and growing, spreading across the country, touching lives that would touch other lives in an endless chain of healing. $218 million. That was what the lawyers had said the inheritance was worth. But Elena knew the truth. It was worth infinitely more. Because you cannot put a price on a sanctuary. You cannot measure the value of a family saved. And you cannot calculate the worth of love that refuses to end. Franklin and Maria had proven that. Elena had proven that. And the Wisteria Inn would keep proving it generation after generation, family after family, life after life, forever.